Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers and sisters and viewers and friends of Iqra TV. Welcome to another edition of Real Talk. I'm your host Iqbal Bana. As I keep saying every week, we come into your houses every week, week in, week out, to try and bring to you information about issues that are affecting our community on a day-to-day basis. And we hope that this program helps you understand some of the issues that confront us every day in our lives, whether it's to do with medicine, whether it's to do with health, whether it's to do education, employment, social injustices, etc., whatever it may be. We have done several programs on all sorts of issues in the past, and I get the feedback saying that people really enjoy it out there. Obviously, last week, the current big issue that faces all communities, and particularly our community, is this issue of the COVID-19 pandemic and how it has devastated communities, not just in our community, in a local area, but across the world. All of us, to a greater or lesser extent, have suffered losses in our community. Everybody has been touched by it, and everybody has been affected by it. I don't think there's anybody that we know who has not been affected by the COVID pandemic. Lots of people have lost loved ones in their families. As I said last week, I have heard of people where fathers and sons and mothers and husbands and wives have died within close proximity to each other. Only last week, another friend of mine, a distant friend of mine that I've known for many, many years, his wife died on the Tuesday, I think, and on the Thursday the husband died, both from COVID related. Now these are things that everybody questions, why is it happening, and we leave it in Allah's hands. But one of the things that we have been told by Prophet ﷺ is that when we have these pandemics, and it happened in his time as well, it is the duty of every Muslim to protect themselves and those around us and all our communities as well. And this is why we had a discussion last week where I was deeply grateful to get some really honored guests. We had Dr. Farooq, or Professor Dr. Mr. Ganchi, who was here with me last week, and I'm really glad to say he's back again today to share some more thoughts. He didn't get too much of airtime last week. We had the Deputy Chief Medical Officer of Bradford Foundation Trust and the Chief Nurse, really two important people in the NHS who are at the forefront, at the face of this, dealing with this pandemic. Today, as I say, I've got Dr. Farooq, or Mr. Farooq Ganchi, or Professor Ganchi. He's got so many titles, I never know which is the one that I should actually use. He's back again. Assalamu alaikum, Farooq bhai, thank you for coming back again. But also, much more importantly, I have somebody very unique with me today. Unique in the sense that he's not a medical doctor, he's not a nurse, but he does work in the NHS. And it is really, really nice to see that in our community, in this region, we have a person in a position in the Bradford Teaching Hospital NHS Trust of Chief Operating Officer. Now that is a very, very important role to play. So I'm really, really deeply honored to introduce to you Sajid Hazeb, who's here with me today. Sajid, assalamu alaikum, welcome. Now I'll talk to you first.
Thank you.
I mean, obviously the Chief Operating Officer. A lot of people may not know exactly what that means. And they may, I'm sorry, I might be just doing a disservice to many of you out there, but certainly I would say that most of the people my age may wonder what a Chief Operating Officer is. So, can you just explain what does a Chief Operating Officer, is that like a Deputy Chief Executive of the...
So basically, in all organisations, hospitals, for example, we have an executive board. So we have a board of directors, which is made up of executive directors. I'm one of those executive directors. We have a chief executive above us. So our chief executive at Bradford is Mel Pickup.
Right.
And then we have a number of executive directors, of which I'm one. So chief operating officer. And we have non-executive directors as well. So our chairman, Dr. Max McLean. So our job really is to deliver the vision and the strategic objectives of the organisation to ensure that we continue to deliver high quality, safe care, and we're accountable for that care we deliver to our regulators who come in, to obviously our non-exec director, to our public that we serve. From that perspective, it's an executive role. But then if you say, well, what do you do practically on a day-to-day basis?
So what does that really mean?
What does that really mean? So basically, it's everything to do with the running of the hospital. My job is really about making sure that all of the different departments in the hospital, all of the clinical services, all of the interactions between the clinical services are working efficiently and as promptly as they possibly can in order to ensure that we continue to deliver the care for our patients.
You are actually coordinating the whole of the structure. And there's 5,500 people employed there.
Yes, there's between 5,500
and you have
6,000
people like Dr. Professor Muhammad, Mr. Gaji. There's probably about hundreds of those. These are all alone to themselves. And you have to coordinate all these people.
Yes, so obviously you don't do a job like that on your own. You have teams of people who work with you, excellent colleagues who work with you. So I'm privileged to be in a position where, like I say, there's the whole exec board, we work together, and then we've got all of the other disciplines in the hospital. So we've got the corporate disciplines such as finance, such as HR, strategy, service development, you've got chief operating officers team, you've got the chief nurses team, and then you've got chief medical officer. But then what we've got in terms of how the hospital is structured is we've got clinical business units, or some people call them clinical service units, where all of the clinical aspects of our organisation are split up into teams, and all of those teams come together. So Farouk sits in one of those teams, so he's an ophthalmologist, but then sits in that specific CBU, and those CBUs report into a care group. Mean? So clinical business unit or clinical service unit. It's how we structure our organisation.
So I understand you have 5,500 staff.
Yeah, between 5,500 to 6,000 staff.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that they're all working efficiently, effectively, and delivering the best quality services that people deserve.
You've got it in one.
How do you fit all that in one day?
So the day starts at about 6 o'clock in the morning, and finishes at whatever time it finishes.
Right. And how long have you been in this job?
So at Bradford, I've been here 4 months. So I started in October in Bradford, in fact, October the 12th. But prior to that, I've been in the NHS for about 20 years now.
You don't look that old.
I'm not that old, actually.
Yeah, you don't look that old at all.
No, I qualified as a clinician, so I'm an orthoptist by background, so specialised in eye disorders, not too dissimilar to what Farouk does. But obviously he's a professor. I'm nowhere near hold those accolades. But certainly in terms of my clinical practice, I practiced for about 2 to 3 years, and then moved into management. And the last sort of 4.5 years, I was over in Leeds. Prior to that, over at Calderdale.
Right. Well, I forgot to say, I mean, Sajid is not a stranger to this area, by the way. I mean, he's a local person. He comes from Calderdale. For people outside this area who don't know Calderdale, it's basically Halifax. The town of Halifax is the centre of the area of Calderdale. So he's a local person, and I'm sure you've got plenty of connections with Bradford and surrounding areas as well. Coming back to Dr. Farouk, I mean, obviously, as a senior clinician, a professor running a major department over there, how pleased were you when you saw an Asian Muslim person taking on a post like the COO, Chief Operating Officer?
I think it is very important. I think it is very symbolic, as well as of significance for our community and the community at large here. He's come into the organization at a very difficult time when we're going through this COVID pandemic. And I think he's picked up this mantle, the challenge, to be the first exec director in our trust. In the history of the trust, I believe. I've been at Bradford for about 20 years, and he happens to be the first Asian that I know who has been the exec director. And he's got fantastic ideas and brilliant vision for the future, which would bode well for both the Bradford district in general and the Asian community in particular, I think.
Inshallah. I mean, obviously, like Farouk says, you come at a time when there's enormous challenges for the NHS. Even without the pandemic, there's been enormous challenges because people have been complaining about the budgets cutbacks over the last 15 years, etc. The trimming down of services, etc. So without even that, you now face this pandemic. I mean, one of your greatest challenges at this moment is getting people to vaccinate themselves. Yeah. I mean, are you involved in that on a day-to-day basis?
Karen, who was here last
Karen
week,
was fantastic,
is heavily involved in that. But of course, I mean, as one of the directors at the organisation, we've all got a duty to ensure that our colleagues, our staff, but also our wider duties in terms of the community reach that we have. And I think, as Farouk says, being from a South Asian background, I'm from Pakistan, my parents are from there, so obviously I can create a connection with the community at large. I can stress how important it is. So it's incumbent upon all of us really in terms of highlighting the need and the requirement for vaccination. And as you were saying in your intro section, actually the impact for BAME background individuals has been devastating. I mean, it's devastating for all communities, but we know it's disproportionately impacted on those from black ethnic minority groups, and we really need to rise to that challenge and respond to that challenge.
And from what Karen was saying, and the other colleagues, the doctor was saying, Dr. Horner was saying that there's a lot of proactive work going on in the community to try and get more and more people from the community to take on the vaccine. Are you seeing a difference taking place? I mean, have you noticed any difference taking place? I mean, certainly in my area, I've seen that there was a reluctance at the beginning. But now I think there's more and more people coming forward. Have you noticed that in this region?
I think you're right that it's making an impact. And it's just like anything else in the world, that some of us are very quick in accepting the new change that comes our way, but some of us would want to have that time to make that decision. Nothing wrong with that. Our role as clinicians, the managers, is to try and provide that information that people need to make that decision that it is right to have the vaccine, protect yourself, protect for your family and friends around you, so as we can all move forwards, and future is going to be much brighter once we overcome these difficult times. Inshallah. And this is where these young managers come into play, I think.
Inshallah. I mean, obviously, I'm sure our viewers will find this interesting to see somebody like Sajid here in this particular role. I mean, it's one of the most important roles in the NHS in the local area, there's no doubt about it. And he's an inspiration to many young people out there. And I would love to hear your views. I mean, what do you think are the important issues that he, as the Chief Operating Officer of the NHS Trust in Bradford, needs to be looking at? And what are the issues that you feel are important to you? Please call us 01274 214 299. The numbers on the screen, it keeps coming up. If you want to talk to us and tell us what you think about your views, what are the important issues that Sajid needs to be talking about, and inshallah one day I'll bring the Chief Executive here as well, who I've been told is quite open to come to the invitation and get scrutinized by me, where I can ask her all sorts of important questions. I mean, there are issues. I agree with you. I have in my time been involved in equality and diversity as head of equality and diversity for a very large organization. So these are something I've been doing for the last 40 years. So there has been issues about opportunities for our people to break that ceiling and get in. It's nice to see somebody like you, but they like to say still not that many. I mean, I'm sure if I ask you the question, how many BAME chief executives are there in the NHS? You probably have enough on one hand and still some spare fingers.
It's improving. It's improving, but we're not quite.
You're a diplomat, aren't you? You're a diplomat. I can tell you. I don't think there are many of our black and ethnic minority people in these senior positions in the NHS at the moment, like there are not in any other organisation. We know that there are not that many chief executives on all the large corporate organisations in this country as well. So there is an issue, and this has been an issue, and I've been confronting this, and I'm hoping that some of the local authority people will be coming along in the not too distant future, and I'll be challenging them on those issues as well, particularly places like Bradford, where we have a very large Muslim community. Now I know you have Zulfi Karim, the chair of the mosque. I was hoping he was going to come here, but he's not been well himself, so I was hoping that the deputy chair, Junaid Karim, would be coming along, but he's working today. But the Council of Mosque can play a very important role, and I know they have been playing a very important role. Have you made any inroads with them? I mean, I'm sure you probably know them quite well anyway.
Yeah, so I mean, we've been linked in with many voluntary sector organisations, including the Council of Mosques, and the leaflets that they've been producing, we've jointly worked on some of those areas, the videos in terms of the work that they've done. All of that has been hand in hand, and they do play a vital role in terms of helping us understand the needs of our communities. But also, the great thing in Bradford is that actually we engage with our staff colleagues as well, and we've got a big proportion of Black, Asian, minority ethnic groups in our organisation as well. So approximately 30%, 32% of our workforce is from a BAME background
Wow.
as well. And that's actually quite a significant achievement, because there's many organisations up and down the country that are nowhere near that level.
Now, you see,
so
under
which is
normal
great.
other circumstances, I would have said to you, 32% is very nice to have, but where are they in the organisation?
Yeah.
I mean, that was the question I would ask normally. But
Yeah.
let me just move away from that. Well, I'll probably do that with your chief executive, so you can warn her on that. But I mean, obviously, at this moment in time, the biggest issue is the vaccination and the COVID. And one of the things is Bradford has been at the forefront in the development of the COVID vaccine, where one of your professors, Dinesh, has been, instrumental. How much of that gives you pride and joy to be part of that type of sort of, innovation?
Yeah, and that's it, isn't it? It's great because Bradford hospitals have got teaching hospital status. It's got fantastic research arm. We deliver, I mean, just to put it into context for you, we deliver services to a population of about 500,000 people, core. But then some of our specialist services, when you take those into account, so some of the ophthalmic services that we have, the specialist ophthalmic services, some of our vascular services, so we're the second arterial centre in West Yorkshire, stroke services. When you count all of those in, we deliver services to over 1 million people. So actually you get a huge amount of pride in terms of making a difference to our patients and their lives. But also when research is a significant component of what we do. So when you see things like the Novavax trial or the work that Farouk is involved in terms of the research arm, that's absolutely brilliant, because that's the future and that's where we need to be heading in terms of incorporating.
You have been involved in, not directly, indirectly, but as well as, I don't know, maybe directly in this Novavax trial, I believe. How have you found that with our local community?
I wasn't the investigator, principal investigator on the trial.
Right.
Professor Saralaya Dinesh is the leading
he's the
figure in
lead.
that.
He's the lead.
But my research team, our research nurses have been helping out with that research. And initially, I think what we see is slight reluctance or hesitance in our Asian community to step up for the participation in clinical trials. And again, it's just inherent in our nature that we would like to have more information, better communication to take part in that. But certainly we had better numbers than before. So yes, the trial has delivered. We recruited over 700 patients in Bradford in that trial overall. And the trial still is ongoing, and they're going to have a switchover design for the study now. So that would continue over the next few months. So any clinical trial, what we call randomized clinical trial, you have two arms of the trial.
Right.
So one arm gets a real drug, the other arm doesn't get the placebo. So some of the patients would not have had the real vaccine, but they would have the placebo. Now, everybody is going to get the vaccine going forwards. So that would be the next phase of the trial.
Is it still yet to be approved, isn't it?
The Novavax is not approved, but the results have been produced and they've shown almost similar efficacy.
They're hoping that it's going to get approved.
It's going to get the approval,
because they're looking forward to that as well.
If I may just switch the subject slightly, because when we talk about COVID, we just talk about the COVID in its own sense that it affects the breathing and the patients are very ill. That is one big problem. But at the same time, how it affects the other health services is another big issue. For example, in ophthalmology, patients may not get their treatment on time. For example, the patients that I look after with sight-threatening eye diseases, where they need injection, they may not be getting the injections on time. That's one part. But one of Saji's role is to try and find alternative ways of delivering that care. And he's been instrumental in sourcing some other
this is an
ways
issue that affects all disciplines, isn't it? Because
exactly.
I mean, cancer care, a lot of people are complaining that cancer care has been sort of put on hold in a way.
Yeah.
Right? I'm sure you'll have plenty of patients in this area as well who will be affected by that. Yeah. So how do you balance those issues?
So that's right, it's balance. So the first thing is that what we've got safe procedures in place at the hospital. And those safe procedures are around how we segregate the patients from COVID and non-COVID patients, or those suspected of having COVID and those who don't have COVID. Because what we need to do is make sure that everybody coming into hospital is kept safe. So that's a key principle of how we do it. But then at the same time, what we've been doing is we've been prioritising our patients. So we've focused in on those patients that need cancer treatment or who've been referred in by their GP with suspected cancer. So as an example, what I would say to the viewers out there is, if you're worried about anything, please don't hesitate to go and contact your GP or contact us directly if it's signs and symptoms of strokes or heart attacks, because actually we're really good at effectively segregating patients and keeping patients safe. If I give you some statistics around cancer, so we receive approximately 400 referrals every single month from GPs where they're suspecting the patients have got cancer. Those patients, the national standard is that you need to see those patients within 2 weeks of the referral coming through. And what I can tell you is that since the pandemic started, because of the way we've been prioritising those patients, apart from 1 month, we've actually delivered in excess of 93% every single month, where we've been able to see those patients in
so
time
you met
order.
the 2-week target.
So we've met the 2-week target. However, there are other patients who were listed for operations who are classified as more routine operations who are having to wait longer. And we're really sorry about that. Of course we are, because it's not pleasant, it's not nice to not receive your treatment. But what we are doing is we're prioritising the patients at most clinical need and clinical urgency, and at the same time coping with the COVID demand that's coming through our front doors. And a bit later on, I mean, obviously I can give you the figures of what we've had in terms of patient coming through with COVID and why it's such a real threat to us. And this is why we need to make sure that we get ourselves vaccinated and we protect our families, we protect ourselves, and actually we lessen the burden on the NHS, and we can go back to living a normal life and what we were used to previously.
I mean, that's the important message, because that's the message we were giving out last week as well with Dr. Horner and Karen and Farouk here, and others who came online. But yeah, I mean, that is, we'll come back to that, because in the second part of the program, inshallah, we've got Dr. Maria Aziz, who's a GP, well known locally in the Keithley area, I understand, joining us particularly to talk about COVID and why it is important that people do take this vaccine whenever it's offered to people. And that is something that, it's just not to protect ourselves, but our loved ones, but also people who work in hospitals as well. Because if we have to go in and you happen to be one of those asymptomatic or a person who may actually have COVID, you could affect other people as well. I mean, obviously, you have a large number of our people working, as you said, in the organization. I mean, at the senior medical level, how is the BAME community represented?
Yeah, so we've got one here.
Yeah, I know.
With us today.
We've got Professor Dinesh as well.
Yeah, we've got Professor Dinesh. I mean,
have you got any more?
From a medical perspective, yeah. And I mean, obviously, Farouk will be able to probably name you all of our colleagues. From a medical perspective, what we tend to find is that the Asian communities do really well in terms of having representation from medical professionals. Where we tend to struggle is in the management fields and also in terms of the seniority. Bradford's unique because we have got people like Farouk, we have got people like Dinesh who are at the forefront, who are leading, but we need more people. And the reason we need more people is because then you can actually understand the services you deliver to your community. So my level of understanding of the needs of the South Asian community, because of the way that I've grown up with my family, is very different to somebody who hasn't grown up in that type of environment. So that's why we need a fully representative NHS to be able to fully meet the needs of the community it serves.
Right. I mean, that's fascinating, obviously, and we'll come back to that. I mean, obviously, I hope that so far people have enjoyed this discussion that we've had. It's a discussion that is very important, and having both Farouk and Sajid here gives us the opportunity to talk to somebody who actually does come from the forefront of the NHS as well. So I hope that you've enjoyed this so far. We will come back to the two of you. As I say, inshallah, after the break, we'll be talking to Dr. Maria Aziz. I hope she's going to come on online, and she will be talking to me about, or us about, the importance of COVID and the vaccination. So inshallah, we'll see you soon. Don't go away. Go and make yourself tea, coffee, whatever it is, or sharbat, and then come back, as long as there's not too much sugar. Inshallah, we'll see you soon. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.